I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Conor Snow, Project Archivist at the Tupper Lake Public Library. Thank you, Conor.
Thank you, Christy. Hi, everyone. As Christy said, my name is Conor Snow. I have been the project archivist at the Goff-Nelson Memorial Library in Tupper Lake since about January of early this year. I originally came onto the project with the goal of basically implementing their archive. They had a huge backlog of historic records that hadn't been touched for years and years and years. And Ben Gawker, the librarian director, brought me on for that purpose, and I processed all of the collections, and they had a very large photograph collection, which we had estimated to be about 3,000 photographs, which ended up being 4,000, which ended up being 5,000, which is now more than 5,000, and it's just become a really, really huge project. On top of the photographs, we also have various other collections such as maps, library records, institutional records, microfilm, and newspapers, as well as vertical files. In this part of the project, now that everything is processed and the archive is up and running, I have been, for the past 3 or 4 months, working on digitizing all the photographs so that they can be put up onto New York Digital Heritage. This has been a very large project, not only just because of the amount of scanning that needs to be done, but the amount of custom Mylar that needs to be created, as well as the extensive metadata for each photograph at the item level. So the reason I'm here today is to speak about BagIt, which is an application that I had learned about when I was in graduate school at NYU in a preservation class. And I thought about it because Ben and I had been discussing how do we want to preserve these photos long term. We know that digitization is not a long-term preservation tool, although it definitely contributes to preservation. And I think a lot of people who aren't in our field might have the misconception that if you digitize, then it's safe forever. And that was clearly something that previous staff and volunteers, although with good intentions, had here at the library. And so what is it and why do I care? So this BagIt application started about 2007, 2008, and it's a Library of Congress tool that was created by the Library of Congress when they were in collaboration with the California Digital Library. And they really just started out with having to transfer a large volume of digital files. And they were trying to determine what was the best way to get the files from one place to another and make sure that all of the data of the files was kept intact. So, we can lose you can transfer something from a flash drive to another computer, and you could actually lose different elements of the file, and it won't be visible to the naked eye. You won't even know. Over time, files can become corrupted, and they might not even open. That's just some problems. One of the many issues that we have with technology is that nothing really does last forever in a digital format. And the Library of Congress's solution was to create BagIt. Now, as you can see on the bottom right of the screen, this is just the banner that comes up every time you open it up, because opening up BagIt or first installing it wasn't the easiest thing. So when I saw this banner pop up, I got really excited. So really the basic idea of BagIt is you have a file folder, say of photos for Tupper Lake Arts, and then you open up BagIt and you create a bag, which is sort of this secure file folder, and you can transfer, upload all of the photo files from your original folder into a bag. So you create a bag for it, you give it a name, and then you can save it within the application. And what it can do is, say a month later you wanted to check on your files to see if anything had become corrupted or anything had been lost, and you can do checksums. There's data verification upon creating the bags, and you can easily just say validate bag, and it'll validate it. Is the bag complete? And it'll basically let you know, okay, I've lost nothing, nothing's been corrupted, and if something had been, then it will tell you. This has also been very helpful when I've been transferring photographs from my computer to a flash drive to my supervisor's computer. He has BagIt on his computer installed, and then we can make sure that nothing had been lost during that transfer. So it's really important when you think about long-term goals of making sure that your digital files are intact. So here, as I mentioned briefly before, We have a very large digitization project going on, probably about 5,000 plus photographs. All of the photographs are stored and organized at the series level and then at the item level. So I've been creating all of my folders that I send off to Christy to have them uploaded on the New York Digital Heritage at the folder level. So we'll have Tupper Lake Arts, Tupper Lake Businesses, Tupper Lake Disasters, and so forth. And so I've been doing each folder of the series as a bagged series as well. I sort of already mentioned all of these other points, but basically after every time I digitize an entire series of photographs, I will make sure that the folder is saved, and then I will create a bag within the BagIt application and upload the photographs into the bag. It creates tags and data for it, sort of like metadata for the actual bag itself. And you can also add as much or as little as you want in terms of bagging date, all the administrative information regarding who created the bag and where it came from. Here's a screenshot of what it looks like when you open the BagIt application. Pretty straightforward. You have options up at the top in the taskbar to create a new bag, to open an existing bag, and to create a bag in place. And there's all of these different things that will become expanded once you actually open up a new bag, and I will show you how to do that in a demo, I think on the next slide. But the basics of the application is that you do need Java. It is run by Java, and you can download it on GitHub as well. There might be some newer editions that have come out from Library of Congress, so you just want to make sure that you're downloading the right one. And the basic workflow is you create a normal file folder like I do for my photographs. I upload everything to BagIt. I create a new bag. Your payload is going to be, as you can see in the top left of the BagIt application, it's going to basically be where all your photo files go. It's your data. It's a very easy upload. And then you can also enter in your manual bag info. The application will automatically generate tags, but you can add more if you'd like. And then you would save the bag. You can save it to wherever. So I can save it to a folder on my desktop. And then you can verify the data to make sure that nothing was lost. And I usually keep the original folder as well, just to have double backup. And it's something I'm going to need to do soon because we are actually transferring everything from this computer that I'm speaking to you on to an external hard drive and then onto a cloud. So we're going to have it in various different places. But this application, BagIt, really is going to come in handy later down the road. 10 years from now, you can see if anything was lost. And we are actually going to be doing monthly checksums that we can run just to make sure that nothing is lost, because we have such a huge collection of digital files that we really hard to keep track of. But this does it very quickly, and the application is very actually user-friendly to use, but not to set up. I had a bit of a looking up manuals of how to do all these things with Java and GitHub. So, all right, I'm going to run the demo. So I just created a shortcut on my desktop for BagIt, and I would open up BagIt 2.8.1, and then I would go into the bin. I had to look this sort of stuff up. I didn't know where to go. And then you want to make sure you click on the batch file, and then automatically that'll come up, which you really don't need, so you can minimize. And then you have your banner, very simple, and it opens up the application. All right, so this is what it basically looks like. It's very simple. There's these main three options up here that you have to start with as a blank template: create a new bag, open an existing bag, or create a bag in place. I'll open an existing bag just so you can sort of see what one looks like. And I would go where I saved my bag. So I'll go to my desktop, my photo digitization files, and then here's an example. I have the original folder for arts, and then the arts bag that I created. Same thing for every series: banking, banking bag. So I open up banking bag. It brings up all of the field information that we have here. In the payload, if you click on banking, that's literally all of your TIFF and JPEG files. And then in the tagged files, these are things that were created automatically by BagIt. And then in here, I had added any information about the bag that I wanted. So you create, a phone number. You'd hit field contact number. I could enter the phone number and then add. And then that would create one of those pieces of information. in the bag info. I had personally added the field source organization, the contact, and the bagging date. The bagging date's important because it's just that technical metadata that you would want to have, just so you know when something was created for future purposes. And other things that were not created by me but were created by BagIt would be bag size, the payload oxum, and the external description would have been the payload, the banking that had been in there. You can go up here to the top then, and these other options become available, such as validate bag, and it'll say, bag is not valid. Is bag complete? The bag is complete. We know that nothing has been lost. It's literally that simple. I'm wondering why it's not. I know why it's not validated, because I had added a phone number, maybe a phone number in there. Tag manifest valid. Well, I don't know what that's about, but usually it just tells you that everything's okay. So then you can save the bag if you make any changes, and then I'll close this bag here. So if I want to create a new bag, I simply go up to create new bag and click OK. You don't need to worry about bag version. And then I have this option here. As you can see, everything's blank. If I go to payload, I click the green plus mark, and then I would go and select where I want where I located the original bag that I'm going to be using. So, or folder. So I would go to photo digitization files. As you can see, I haven't made a bag for organizations and clubs yet. So I would click on that, hit open, and then automatically everything gets added into the payload. And then I don't need to make any other tags unless I wanted to. But I would then, here's where I would add my field for my bag info. So if I do my field source organization, Goff-Nelson Memorial Library, and then add, and it automatically gets added in. Email, and then a bagging date of 2nd, 2021. Now, BagIt doesn't require you to have this information. It would all just depend on what your institution's requirements would be if you were to have this application. It lets you do as little or as much as you want, which I think is really great. And it's also very easy to use. And then once you create that bag info and you have the payload uploaded, you would hit Save Bag As, and then you would browse where you want to save it. I usually save it in the same area as my other files, so it shows up there. And then I would give it the name, organizations and clubs bag, then hit OK. And then depending on how many files you have, it could take a really long time to do this or a very little amount of time. And this is going by pretty quickly. Some of my series were about 1,500 photographs, and so I'd be sitting here for a little couple minutes. Going. And it'll say that the bag was saved. And then once you save the bag, you can validate it. It's going to validate all the items here. The validation successful, which is good. It's profile compliant. Everything's good in there. I don't know why the other one was giving me trouble. And then is bag complete? Bag is complete. And then I could literally close the bag or close the application. And then it should show up in wherever I saved it. And it's very simple to use. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. So I've figured out some pros and cons of using this application. One of them is that it's fairly easy to use. As you just saw, once it's actually installed, I had a bit of a problem with getting it up and running, but a couple internet searches, and also Library of Congress does have a user guide for it. So I was able to look at that. Christy, I could send that to you as well. It's like a very long PDF, but it gives you a lot of the ins and outs of requirements, installation, running of the different features. It gets a bit more complex than what I gave you, but this is how I use it, and it's worked out very well for me. It's very quick to validate the bags and just to say, you know, I could do it before I leave the office one day and say, oh man, it's been 2 months since I checked on my files. I could open up all the files, do a checksum, and it'll let me know if anything's wrong. You don't need to know coding, which I think is great. That's one of those things that I'm always a little intimidated by. It's free. That's also really important. It's a free resource provided by the Library of Congress. And it really does contribute to long-term preservation, because that's something that as archivists and librarians, we want to make sure that our files, especially now that almost, you know, a lot of new things are digital, and we also are digitizing records and photographs, and for long-term preservation, we really need to make sure that the files are kept safe and don't degrade over time. And this is one tool that helps with that, and it's simple. Some of the limitations I think to it would be that, you know, if you have a limited technology, it could be a little intimidating, but don't worry, if I can do it, you can do it. And one of the other things is that both ends of, if you're sending files to someone, both ends actually must have BagIt in order to validate the bags. So when I send the photos to Christy, she is uploading some of the, I believe the JPEGs up onto the website, but she has no way of validating to make sure that nothing had been lost when I transferred them onto a flash drive. But I think for those purposes on the Digital Heritage website, that's not really a big issue. It really is something that has to be our concern here at the library, is the repository. So I installed BagIt onto my supervisor's computer, and basically anywhere I think it's going to need to go. And then my supervisor can then validate the bags once I give them to him. So that is one of the downsides to it, is that you can't just validate bags. I can send the bags to you, but you have to have BagIt in order to actually do a checksum. And then moving forward here on this project, really just finishing all the digitization. There's a lot that needs to be done still, because things have just kept coming and coming and coming. We have more photos than we thought. Going to perform continual checksums to verify the file integrity and make sure that everything is all set for whoever takes my position after this. And I've been able to actually train the staff on BagIt, and it seems to be pretty easy to use for them as well. It's just a matter of the more you use it, the better you get at it, and it becomes like second nature. So that's about it from me. I'm here for questions or concerns. So.
Thanks, Connor. I didn't realize how easy it would be, but at the same time, I can see myself getting very confused. Do you have an example? Do you have an example of like what it would do if there was an error or like a mismatch of things?
Well, luckily I haven't had one yet. I do believe that, you know, I don't want to answer this question ignorantly. I'm really lucky that I haven't had one. I believe that I have to reread the user manual again to make sure, but I haven't actually gotten one of those messages yet, so I can't really confirm. These files aren't that old, luckily. So I wish I could answer that a little bit more in depth, but.
Everyone's welcome to unmute or type your questions into chat if you have any, or if you wanted to like talk about what you would potentially want to use this for, maybe.
Other than making it very easy to validate files and having like a really clear dating, and it looks like transcription of any, like the history of validation, it looks like it's keeping a record of that. Like, how does this differ from a conventional backup? Is there any other way that it's different from a conventional backup besides, like, you know, the bagging mechanism with its dating and how easy it makes it to validate? I missed the first couple minutes, so maybe you heard that.
Yeah. So do you have a specific other backup in mind, like a cloud or?
Yeah, just, you know, like making a copy of a file and putting it in a different location, right? And there is a date associated with that, but, you know, it's not easy to verify the integrity of the file that way. I was just curious if there were other mechanisms in place with this tool that, you know, that it's offering as part of the total package.
Yeah, I think that one of the big things is whenever we do make a copy of a file, we are actually losing data every time.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't like, even when I make a copy and copy something onto my cloud on Gmail or whatever, it actually is losing its integrity immediately. And what is nice is that with BagIt, it creates this secure folder where it uploads the basically original files in their integrity format. It's not creating a separate, it's lossless. It's not creating a degraded version of the file, which is really nice about it. And the fact that it does have that built-in checksums and option to validate, which you can't do on Drive, or at least I don't think you can. I'm not sure. Yeah, thanks, Chuck. This provides a really good option for you to make sure whenever you want, you can schedule them, or you can just, say, I think you can schedule them, but you can just check whenever you want to see what the integrity of the file is. And it takes all sorts of formats like TIFFs and JPEGs. And it doesn't, what's also nice about it is that it doesn't actually need any file space restrictions, because it's a separate application as to where you store them, as opposed to a backup like Drive, where you only have so much storage space. I can have as many or as high quality photos as I want, as long as, as I store them somewhere. But BagIt itself isn't actually a hosting platform. It's just an application that runs separately to wherever you're storing the photographs. So that's really nice. And you're not actually making copies. You're just checking the validation of the bag itself, which is nice. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Okay. Thank you.
And that kind of answers the other question we have in the chat about a large document, and that the size is not limited. It's just a matter of where you're housing it locally, correct?
Right, and that's my interpretation of it, because I've had issues with, I have probably 4,000 at the moment, because I'm doing a TIFF and a JPEG of each image. I've done about 3,500 photos, so you double that. And I'm using up a lot of storage space on the computer, but it doesn't affect BagIt at all in terms of the payload. And yeah, I have photos that are set at 1,200 or 600 DPI TIFFs, and it scans them or validates them very quickly and easily. It just, if you have a large number of photographs or a large file, it might take a little bit longer to validate, but it's not going to say no. And there could be more information on that in the user manual, because I'm not an expert.
Right, I think I glimpsed the user manual, and it was very dense.
Yeah, it's very thorough.
Yeah, thorough. Yeah. Claire had a compliment that that she doesn't have any questions, so thank you. Anyone else want to ask a question, or maybe what do you want to use this for? What were your ideas for using this product? Horror stories from lost files.
And I do want to add that one reason I really love this is just because for smaller libraries and places that don't have an exorbitant amount of funds or a IT staff.
That's everyone here, yeah.
Well, right. This is a great tool because it's free and it's pretty easy to use and it doesn't take a lot of time. And for something that's so quick and easy, it has such a large impact on long-term preservation for what we do here. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of it. I'm sure there are more up-to-date, more technically complex systems out there that people use in larger, institutions, but I would say for libraries our size, this is a great tool.
Anything else anyone wants to talk about? This went so quickly, but it was a nice little, I don't know, digestible tutorial, which we don't get a lot of these days. So.
That was my goal.
But if anything comes up, I'm sure Conor would be more than willing to proffer some advice. But if there's nothing else, we don't have to keep you any longer than we need to, right? Real quick before we go, I do want to have you fill out a survey. Of course, I'm in the wrong, speaking of Windows. But thank you all for coming. I do want to say that. We have a lot of other really interesting programs coming up in the next couple weeks. One of which is another NOCO. Here's the survey. Oh, thanks for coming, Jen. But we're doing a series called the NOCO Showcase Series, where we're highlighting unique cultural heritage organizations and their unique collections. So if anyone has anything from the North Country that they would like to showcase, let me know. We're looking for presentations. But next, on the 17th, we have Chessie Monks Kelly from Historic Saranac Lake, who's going to be talking about some, it's about researching the researchers. So it should be really interesting about Historic Saranac Lake. But if there's nothing else, I will be sharing with you the link to the recording, the slides, the tutorial or guide from Library of Congress. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But I want to say thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Conor.
Thank you, and feel free, Christy, you can include my email address in that information sending out. I'm more than happy to answer questions. So
great, thank you so much, and everybody be safe, stay warm, and have a great holiday season.
See ya.
Bye.